and welcome to the very last area of study for VCE Psychology. How very exciting! This area of study is on mental health. We will be looking at a range of things, including mental illness, stress, and strategies for coping. But in this video, we're looking at normality. What is normality, you might ask? Good question. There are, in fact, 6 approaches to normality that we should consider. Perhaps you could make up a neat mnemonic device with the 6 initial letters. For example, short fat hippos suck mild Sundays. Each of these concepts approaches normality in quite a different way. Let's go through each of them in some detail. The Socio-Cultural Approach suggests that normality is contingent on norms of society or of a particular culture. Under this approach, what is considered normal in one culture may be quite abnormal in another. For example, it is normal in some cultures to be brutally honest. In others, however, being very honest might come across as rude. The functional approach, on the other hand, uses a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 is completely dependent and 100 is completely independent. According to this approach, being normal means that you can function independently in society. In the historical approach, we can accept that concepts of normality are likely to change over time. Apartheid at one point might have been considered normal, whereas to think in such a manner these days would be considered abnormal. The situational approach contends that normality depends on situational context. For example, it might be acceptable to wear a suit to a wedding or a funeral, but probably not to a pool party. Then we have the medical approach, which says that if one is mentally and physically healthy, then they are normal. And if they're not, they are abnormal. This approach may lead to labelling. How would you feel being called abnormal just for having broken a finger? And lastly, there is the statistical approach. The statistical approach is based on a bell-shaped distribution of normality. That is, if you're a statistical outlier, then you're abnormal. Which approach to normality we adopt could have great consequences on our perception of the world. Imagine our example of swimming in a suit from earlier. If we adopt a medical approach, for example, this might be considered normal behaviour, on the assumption that the swimmer is physically and mentally healthy. Consider a question like this. Explain the difference between the socio-cultural approach and the situational approach to normality. The question is worth 2 marks. In order to get the full marks, a simple definition of each approach should suffice, because the question is only worth 2 marks. But because we are explaining the difference between the 2 approaches, we need to link the 2 definitions. To do this, we can use words like whereas or comparatively. If you really want to make sure that you get the full 2 marks, you could use an example for each approach. So we could go with something like this. The socio-cultural approach suggests that normality depends on one's culture or society. Thoughts, feelings, and behaviours normal to one culture may be abnormal to another. For example, spitting on the ground is accepted in many parts of Southeast Asia, but not so much in Australia. Comparatively, the situational approach suggests that what is normal depends on the particular situation or context, even within the same society or culture. For example, in Australia, it might be normal to carry guns during training in the army, but not at the dinner table. Super! So remember, short fat hippos suck mild Sundays. In the next video, we're looking at how to differentiate mental health from mental illness. Keep working hard and have a psychedelic day.